The receptionist at Tech Vision peered over her rimless glasses, frowning as she watched the woman with grey hair and a floral blouse step into the marble lobby. Mrs. Eleanor Vance, 68 years old, clutched a worn leather satchel with hands that trembled slightly. It wasn't from nervousness, it was pure determination. 3 hours earlier, her granddaughter Sarah had called in tears. Her ankle was swollen like a melon, the interview scheduled for 10 in the morning, the opportunity she had been waiting months for. Tech Vision didn't give second chances. CEO Philip Nolan was known for his ruthless genius and complete intolerance, for lateness or rescheduling. Eleanor didn't think twice. She took the bus from Queens, switched subway lines 3 times, and arrived at the financial district 15 minutes early. The glass skyscraper reflected the grey New York sky, so tall it seemed to scrape the clouds. She had never set foot in a place like this. "Sarah Vance," the receptionist announced over the intercom, her tone dripping with doubt. Eleanor nodded and signed the visitor log with the neat cursive she had learned in a rural schoolhouse in Kansas decades ago. The elevator climbed 40 floors in silence. Eleanor checked her reflection in the mirrored wall. The floral blouse her eldest daughter had given her for her birthday, the brown skirt she wore to church, the sensible low heels, the only ones that didn't hurt her tired feet. Nothing about her matched this environment of glass and steel, but she wasn't there to match. She was there to save Sarah's dream. The office door opened before she could knock. A tall man in an impeccable charcoal suit, his dark hair perfectly coiffed, stared at her. Philip Nolan had dark, piercing eyes, the kind that seemed to read people's souls. His face expressed absolute disbelief. "You must be lost," he said, his voice controlled but with an edge of irritation. "The interview is with Sarah Vance." "I know," Eleanor replied, walking into the office uninvited. "That's why I'm here." Philip blinked, confused. The room was enormous, offering a panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline. Abstract art hung on the walls. A glass desk held 3 monitors. Shelves were lined with books on technology and management. Everything screamed success, power, control. "You need to leave," he said, firmer this time. "I have a tight schedule." "Sarah twisted her ankle last night," Eleanor explained, placing the key satchel on the glass desk. "Her foot is swollen. She can't even put on a shoe. But I know you don't accept rescheduling. That's why I came to deliver this personally." She opened the satchel and pulled out a portfolio printed on photo paper, every page protected by plastic sleeves. They were Sarah's projects, apps, systems, interfaces. There were also certificates, letters of recommendation, and a detailed resume. Philip looked at the documents, then at Eleanor, then back at the documents. His expression was impossible to decipher. "You came all the way here to drop off a portfolio?" he asked. In a tone Eleanor couldn't quite place. "You could have just emailed it." "I could have," Eleanor agreed, meeting his gaze without fear. "But my granddaughter deserves more than an email. She worked on this portfolio for 6 months. She spent sleepless nights studying every detail of what Tech Vision does. She knows every product you've launched in the last 3 years. She memorized the company mission, and she truly believes she can make a difference here." The silence that followed was heavy. Philip continued to look at Eleanor with that undecipherable expression. She could sense he was about to call security to escort her out, but there was something in his eyes, a spark of something she couldn't name. "Why did you do this?" Philip asked finally. His voice had changed. It was quieter, almost vulnerable. "Because I raised 3 daughters alone after my husband left me," Eleanor replied simply. "Because I know what it is to fight for every opportunity. Because Sarah is brilliant and deserves a chance. And because a grandmother does whatever is necessary for her grandchildren." Philip turned to the window, hands in his pockets. Eleanor could see his silhouette against the city skyline. He stood there for long seconds, taking a deep breath. "My grandmother raised me," he said suddenly, still facing away. "My mother worked 3 shifts. My father was never in the picture. Grandma Beatrice was the one who walked me to school, who checked my homework, who believed in me when no one else did." He turned around and Eleanor saw that his eyes were slightly misty. "She would do exactly what you are doing right now," Philip continued. "She would walk into this office, look me in the eye and fight for me. without fear, without caring about protocol or hierarchy. Eleanor nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. "I'm going to break my own protocol," Philip announced, walking back to his desk. "I will interview your granddaughter, but on one condition." "Which is?" Eleanor asked, ready to accept anything. "You come with her." Eleanor blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" "To the interview. I want you present." Philip opened the calendar on his computer. "Next Thursday, 10 a.m., Sarah and you, both of you." "But I don't understand anything about technology," Eleanor protested. "You don't need to," Philip said with a half smile. "You just need to be there." They set the date. Eleanor thanked him 3 times before leaving, still unable to believe what had just happened. In the elevator, she finally let the tears fall. Tears of relief, gratitude, and hope. When she arrived at Sarah's place, a small studio apartment in Queens, she found her granddaughter lying on the couch with her foot elevated, wrapped in ice packs. "Grandma, what happened?" Sarah asked anxiously. "Did you manage to drop it off?" "I managed more than that," Eleanor said, smiling. "You have an interview next Thursday, and I'm going with you." Sarah's eyes went wide. "What do you mean you're going? With me?" Eleanor told her everything. Every detail of the conversation, Philip's reaction, the unusual condition. Sarah listened with her mouth open, alternating between laughter and tears. "Grandma, you're crazy," Sarah said, hugging her tightly. "Completely crazy and completely amazing." In the days that followed, they prepared together. Sarah reviewed her projects, studied potential questions, and practiced presentations. Eleanor just observed, asking simple questions that often revealed points Sarah hadn't considered. The night before the interview, Sarah was too nervous to sleep. Eleanor made chamomile tea and sat beside her on the narrow sofa. "What if I mess everything up?" Sarah whispered. "What if he realizes I'm not as good as my portfolio suggests?" "You are better," Eleanor said, holding her hand. "Your portfolio shows your technical skills, but you have something that cannot be printed on paper." "What?" "Heart. You care about the people who will use what you create. I saw that in your projects. Every app was designed to make someone's life easier. You don't learn that in any course." Sarah rested her head on her grandmother's shoulder, just like she did when she was a child. "Thank you, Grandma, for everything." On Thursday, they arrived at Tech Vision punctually. Sarah was limping slightly, but managed to walk with the help of a makeshift cane. Eleanor wore the same floral blouse, though this time Sarah insisted she wear a blazer over it. Philip met them personally at the reception. He greeted Sarah formally, then looked at Eleanor and nodded, a silent respect passing between them. The interview started technically. Philip asked questions about programming languages, agile methodologies, database experience. Sarah answered with confidence, demonstrating deep and up-to-date knowledge. Eleanor remained silent, sitting in a chair in the corner. After 40 minutes, Philip changed his tone. "Sarah, tell me about your favorite project in the portfolio." Sarah took a deep breath. "The community volunteering app. I created it to connect people willing to help with institutions that need support. The interface is simple because I thought of the elderly who need to navigate it. The verification system is robust because I thought of the safety of the children being served. And the feedback module is detailed because I thought of the volunteers who want to see the real impact of their work." Philip leaned forward. "Why? Excuse me. Why create that? There are 1,000 more profitable, flashier projects to put in a portfolio." Sarah looked at Eleanor, who nodded encouragingly. "Because technology without purpose is empty," Sarah said. "I can create the most sophisticated app in the world, but if it doesn't improve someone's life, what's the point? I learned that from my grandmother. She always says our life is measured by the lives we touch." Philip remained silent for long seconds. Then he stood up and extended his hand. "Welcome to Tech Vision, Sarah." Sarah froze. "What?" "You're hired. You start Monday." The tears fell before Sarah could control them. She shook Philip's hand, then ran to hug Eleanor, who was also crying. "Thank you," Sarah whispered in her grandmother's ear. "None of this would be possible without you." After Sarah left to sign documents with HR, Philip asked Eleanor to stay. She looked at him, curious. "I need to ask you a favor," he said, and for the first time since they met, he seemed genuinely hesitant. "Go ahead," Eleanor replied. "I need someone like you here." Eleanor looked at Philip in surprise. "Someone like me?" she repeated, not understanding. "But I don't know anything about technology." Philip ran a hand through his hair, a gesture revealing unusual vulnerability. "Sit down, please." She returned to the chair. Philip remained standing, walking to the window. New York City stretched out below them, a sea of concrete and glass under a heavy sky. "I built this company from scratch," he began, his voice low. "I started in a rented apartment with 2 partners. Today we have 300 employees, revenue of $80 million a year, and we are a benchmark in the market. But do you know what I lost along the way?" Eleanor waited in silence. "Humanity," Philip turned to her. "My team fears me. They respect my competence, but they fear me. When I walk into a room, silence falls like a curtain. No one laughs, no one relaxes, and I don't know how to change that anymore." He returned to the desk, leaning his hands on the glass. "My grandmother used to say that success without human connection is just well-dressed loneliness. She saw me, not as a CEO, not as a businessman, as Philip, as a grandson, as a person, and I miss that." Eleanor began to understand where he was going. "When you walked in here last week," Philip continued, "it was the first time in years that someone challenged me without fear. You weren't intimidated by this office, by my title, by my reputation. You spoke to me as a person, and that reminded me of what I'm losing." He opened a drawer and pulled out a document. "I want to hire you as a humanity consultant. Your job would be to observe the company, talk to employees, sit in on meetings, and give me honest feedback about our culture, about what is working and what is breaking people inside." Eleanor was speechless. "Consultant of what?" "Of humanity," Philip repeated. "I know it sounds strange, but I need someone who doesn't understand technology, who isn't contaminated by corporate vices. I need someone who sees people, not job titles, and you have that gift." "But I've never worked in an office," Eleanor protested. "I have no degree, no experience." "You have 70 years of life," Philip said. "You raised 3 daughters alone, survived abandonment, poverty, pain, and chose to love instead of becoming bitter. That is worth more than any diploma." 68, Eleanor corrected automatically, then smiled. "I haven't reached 70 yet." Philip smiled back, a genuine smile that completely transformed his face. "So, do you accept?" Eleanor thought about her life. Decades of cleaning houses, ironing clothes, working odd jobs to support her daughters, the meager pension that barely paid the rent, the opportunity to do something new, to matter in a different way. "I accept," she said, "but on one condition." "Which is?" "You have to be willing to hear difficult truths, because I'm going to tell you exactly what I see without sugarcoating it." Philip extended his hand. "I wouldn't expect anything less." They shook on it. Eleanor would start the following Monday. The salary was 3 times her pension. Sarah almost fainted when her grandmother told her. In the first few days, Eleanor just observed. She arrived at 8 in the morning, sat in different departments, and paid attention. Not to code or reports, but to people. How they spoke, how they moved, what their eyes said when they thought no one was looking. What she saw disturbed her deeply. The company was too quiet, not the productive silence of concentration, but the heavy silence of fear. Employees walked hurriedly through the corridors looking down. In meetings, only the managers spoke. The others took notes, agreed with everything, questioned nothing. In the cafeteria, Eleanor sat next to a young woman eating alone, her eyes red. "May I sit here?" she asked. The young woman nodded, surprised. Eleanor wasn't wearing a manager's badge, so perhaps she didn't seem threatening. "I'm Eleanor, the new consultant. And you?" "Chloe, administrative assistant." They talked. Chloe was 22, graduated in administration 6 months ago. She had been working at TechVision for only 2 months, but was already thinking about quitting. "Why?" Eleanor asked gently. Chloe looked around before answering, her voice low. I had an idea to optimize the filing system. I took it to my supervisor. He humiliated me in front of everyone, said interns aren't here to think but to execute. Since then, I only do what I'm told. I don't offer ideas anymore. Eleanor felt her heart squeeze. How many Chloes were there? How many brilliant people were being extinguished? Over the next 3 weeks, she spoke to dozens of employees. A developer who had hidden the birth of his daughter because taking paternity leave was seen as a weakness. A junior associate who had made a mistake and suffered alone for weeks, afraid to ask for help. A project manager who woke up every night with tachycardia, seriously thinking about giving up on everything. At the end of the 3rd week, Eleanor requested a meeting with Philip. He received her immediately, anxious. "Well?" he asked. "What did you see?" "Your team is afraid," Eleanor said bluntly. "Afraid to make mistakes, afraid to look weak, afraid to be human." Philip went pale. "Explain." She told him everything, every story, every detail. Philip listened in growing silence, his face becoming darker. "I did this," he said when she finished. "I created this environment." "Not alone," Eleanor corrected, "but you can undo it. If you have the courage." "What do you suggest?" "That you listen, truly. Call a general meeting. Tell your team you want to hear them, and then shut your mouth and let them speak." Philip hesitated. "What if they say nothing?" "They will. They just need to know it's safe." 3 days later, Philip called a town hall meeting. 300 employees gathered in the auditorium. The atmosphere was tense, everyone expecting a bad announcement. Layoffs, restructuring, impossible targets. Philip walked onto the stage without a prepared speech. Eleanor was sitting in the front row, giving him silent courage. "I'm here to listen," he began. "I built this company focused on results, growth, excellence. But I realized that in the process, I lost something fundamental. You. The people who make all of this happen. So today, I'm not going to speak. I'm going to listen. What is working? What is breaking you? What needs to change?" The silence was absolute. Seconds dragged on like hours. Employees exchanged nervous glances. No one dared to be the first. Then Chloe stood up. Her voice shook, but she was firm. "I'm afraid to have ideas because the last time I had one I was humiliated, and I know I'm not the only one." The silence broke like a bursting dam. One by one, employees began to speak. The developer told of hiding his fatherhood. The junior spoke about the fear of asking for help. The manager about the burnout that made her want to quit. Philip listened to everything, his face increasingly emotional. When everyone had finished, he took a deep breath. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "I didn't know. But that is no excuse. I created an environment where you are afraid to be human, and that ends today. From now on, we change, together." The room exploded in applause, not the polite applause at the end of a presentation, but the cathartic applause of people who finally felt seen. After the meeting, Philip found Eleanor backstage. He was crying openly. "Thank you," he said, "for making me see." Eleanor touched his arm. "The hard part starts now. Talking is easy. Change is what's going to hurt." "I'm ready," Philip promised. And he was. In the following weeks, he implemented profound changes. He created anonymous feedback channels. He instituted weekly meetings where any employee could speak directly to him. He fired the supervisor who had humiliated Chloe. He implemented mandatory paid paternity leave. He hired a psychologist for free counseling for employees. 2 months later, the transformation was visible. There was laughter in the hallways, collaboration between departments. People greeted each other, talked, shared ideas. Sarah, who now led a small team of developers, reported a 40% increase in productivity. Not because they were working more hours, but because they were working better, with joy, with purpose. Eleanor watched it all with silent satisfaction. At 68, she had discovered a new purpose. She was no longer just the grandmother who cared for family. She was the person helping others rediscover their humanity. But success did not go unnoticed, and not everyone was happy about it. On a cloudy Thursday, Philip was summoned to an emergency meeting with the board of investors. He entered the boardroom confident, expecting praise for the results. What he got was an ambush. Robert Sterling, the chairman of the board, a 60-year-old man with white hair and cold eyes, slammed a folder onto the table. "Philip," he began, his voice cutting, "we are worried about the direction of the company." "What do you mean?" Philip asked, confused. "Productivity is up, turnover is down, employees are more engaged, and profits are down 3%, Robert countered. "Your wellness programs, your leaves, your extra hires, all of this costs money, money that should be going to the shareholders." Philip felt his blood run cold. "But the drop in profit is temporary with healthier teams." "We aren't interested in temporary," another board member interrupted. "We are interested in results now." Robert leaned forward. "You're getting soft, Philip. That old woman you hired is contaminating your vision. We need a CEO focused on profit, not feelings." "That old woman," Philip said, his voice dangerously calm, "has a name, Mrs. Eleanor Vance, and she saved this company." "Saved?" Robert laughed. "She is sinking the company, and you with it." The door opened. Eleanor walked in, followed by Sarah. Philip looked at them, surprised. "Excuse me," Eleanor said, addressing the board. "I heard my name." Robert rolled his eyes. "This is a private meeting. About me, so I have a right to be here." She pulled out a chair and sat down, ignoring the protests. "You say I'm sinking the company," she continued. "Let's look at the facts. Turnover was 30% a year. Do you know how much it cost to hire and train replacements? More than all the wellness programs combined. Productivity has increased, sales too. And for the first time in 5 years, no one has sued the company for workplace harassment." "But the profits," Robert began, "dropped 3%. 3. While employee satisfaction rose 50%. And do you know what happy employees do? They stay, they produce, they innovate. This is investment, not waste." She stood up, looking each board member in the eye. "My husband abandoned me when my daughters were small. I had to choose between becoming bitter or loving. I chose to love and I survived. You are choosing quick profit over sustainable growth, and you will reap what you sow." Robert slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. Philip, you have 3 months to reverse these changes or you will be replaced." The ultimatum hung in the air like a concrete threat. Philip left the meeting like a man in a trance. Eleanor and Sarah followed him to his office, where he collapsed into his chair, face in his hands. 3 months, he murmured. 3 months to destroy everything we built. Or 3 months to prove them wrong, Eleanor said, sitting across from him. "How? They own the money, they decide. They own shares. You own the company. There is a difference." Sarah pulled up a chair. "Grandma is right. We need concrete data showing that humanity is profitable in the long run." Philip lifted his face. His eyes were red. "And if we don't succeed, what if I lose the company I built?" "Then you will lose it being faithful to who you are," Eleanor said firmly, "not being faithful to who they want you to be." In the following days, Philip plunged into a deep existential crisis. He woke up at 3 a.m., heart racing, thinking about the ultimatum, his grandmother's values versus the threat of losing everything. What would Grandma Beatrice do? He knew the answer. She would fight. But she would fight the right way. Eleanor noticed the change in him. Philip was quieter, more distant. He wasn't participating in the hallway chats as he had started to do. He was retreating into the protective shell of the ruthless CEO. On a rainy afternoon, she entered his office without knocking. Philip was watching the rain fall over the city, hands in his pockets. "Are you going to give up?" she asked. He turned, surprised. "Not giving up, just being realistic." Realism is planning while considering obstacles. Giving up is accepting defeat before fighting. Philip sighed. "Mrs. Vance, you don't understand. There are millions at stake, powerful investors. If I go against the board, I could lose everything." "And if you don't go against them? What do you lose?" Philip remained silent. "You lose your soul," Eleanor continued, approaching him. "You lose the reason why you built all this. You lose the connection with the people who make this company. Work. And in the end you lose anyway, only empty inside. She placed a hand on his arm. My husband left me with 3 mouths to feed and not a penny. I could have given up. Many people said I should. Put the girls up for adoption, find a new husband, stop dreaming I could make it alone. But do you know what I did? What? I woke up every day and chose to fight. Not because I was sure I would win, but because it was the only way to look my daughters in the eye and say I gave my best. Philip felt a knot in his throat. Have you always been this way, so strong? Eleanor smiled sadly. Strong? I cried more nights than I can count. I was afraid every day, but I learned that courage isn't not having fear. It's having fear and moving forward anyway. That night, Sarah appeared in the office with news. Her face was radiant with excitement. Philip, we closed with Silva and Rodriguez Consulting, a 2-year contract, $3 million. Philip widened his eyes. How did you manage that? Sarah smiled. They visited our office last week, remember? Their director told me something interesting. He said he was deciding between us and 2 competitors, but he chose TechVision because our team seemed genuinely happy. He said, and I quote, that he didn't want to hire a company where the employees looked dead inside. Eleanor, who was in the room organizing papers, stopped and looked at Philip with a discreet smile. See, she said simply, humanity sells. Philip sat down slowly. The new contract not only offset the 3% profit drop, but put the company in the black again. It was the concrete proof he needed. But would it be enough to convince the board? He spent the weekend compiling data. Sarah helped, as did several managers who had already embraced the new culture. They made spreadsheets, charts, projections. Every number told a story. Turnover had dropped from 30 to 8%. Annual savings, $2.3 million in hiring and training costs. Productivity had increased on average 25% in all sectors. The number of labor lawsuits had dropped to 0. And now, a new $1 million contract directly attributed to the renewed culture. On Monday, Philip requested an extraordinary meeting with the board. Robert Sterling accepted reluctantly. Is this to ask for more time, he asked on the phone. Because the answer is no. It is to show results, Philip replied calmly. Give us 1 hour. The meeting was set for Thursday. Philip didn't sleep the night before. Eleanor, knowing this, appeared at his house at 6 in the morning with homemade biscuits and coffee. Did Grandma Beatrice do this for you? She asked, placing the still warm biscuits on the table. Philip smiled, eyes watery. How did you know? Because that's what grandmas do. We care, especially the nights before big battles. They ate together in comfortable silence. Then Eleanor spoke. It's going to work out. Not because the universe is fair, but because you prepared well. And more importantly, because you believe. When you truly believe, people feel it. At 10 in the morning, the boardroom was full. The full board, 5 investors with stony faces. Robert at the head of the table, with that expression of someone who has already decided everything. Philip walked in with Sarah and Eleanor. Robert frowned. They can't be here. This is a board meeting. Sarah is head of development. Mrs. Vance is the official consultant. Both are fundamental to the presentation. Robert huffed but didn't protest further. Philip turned on the projector and began. His voice was firm, secure. He showed every number, every chart, every saving. He spoke of the new contract, of projections for the next year showing sustainable growth of 15%. When he finished, the silence was heavy. All very pretty, Robert said finally, but you are betting that this so-called culture will continue to yield results. What if it doesn't? If it doesn't, Philip said calmly, I resign without contest. But I want you to understand one thing. This isn't just a management change, it's an identity change. And a strong identity attracts strong talent, which generates strong results. One of the younger investors, silent until then, raised his hand. Fabian Miller, 38, a newcomer to the board. Can I ask a question? He looked at Eleanor. You said in the last meeting that your husband abandoned you. How did you deal with that? Eleanor was surprised by the question but answered. I cried a lot. Then I got up. Because I had 3 daughters watching me to see what I would do. And I realized I could choose, be a victim or be an example. Fabian nodded slowly. My family business went bankrupt when I was 20. My father became bitter, pushed everyone away, spent the last 15 years blaming the world. I swore I'd never be like that. That's why I invested in Tech Vision. I saw a CEO who balanced ambition with principles. He looked at Robert. And what I'm seeing now reminds me why I invested. Philip isn't weakening the company. He is strengthening what really matters, the people who make it work. Another board member spoke up, then another. The room began to divide. 3 in favor of Philip, 2 undecided. Robert, furiously against. This is absurd, Robert exploded. You are going to throw away profits because of cheap sentimentality? It's not sentimentality, Fabian countered. It's long-term strategy. And the numbers prove it. Robert stood up abruptly. Very well, let's vote. All in favor of giving Philip 3 months to prove his vision, raise your hand. 4 hands went up, including Fabian's. 1 was missing. Robert looked at Teresa Caldwell, the only woman on the board, who remained silent. Teresa? He pressed. She looked at Eleanor, then at Philip, then at the numbers on the screen. I have a counter-proposal, she said, calmly. 6 months, not 3. Real cultural change takes time. If in 6 months the numbers drop, Philip resigns as promised. But if they rise, Robert, you resign from the board. The room went into shock. Robert went pale. That is, he stammered, that is... Fair, Teresa completed. You bet against him, he bets his career. It's only fair you bet something too. Robert looked around, seeing he was losing ground. Finally, he nodded rigidly. Accepted. The vote was unanimous. Philip had 6 months. When they left the room, Sarah hugged her grandmother tightly. Did you see Robert's face? She whispered, laughing. Eleanor smiled, but she was thoughtful. The victory was good, but the real challenge was just beginning. That night, Philip invited the whole team to celebrate. They rented a rooftop space with a view of the illuminated city. There was music, food, and for the first time in years, genuine laughter filled the air. Eleanor sat in a corner observing. Chloe, the assistant who had been humiliated, was now leading a presentation of ideas for new projects. The developer, who had hidden his fatherhood, was proudly showing photos of his 3-month-old daughter. The manager, who thought about quitting, was smiling, relaxed for the first time in months. Philip approached, 2 glasses of juice in his hands. You don't drink? She asked. I stopped 10 years ago. Grandma Beatrice made me promise. He sat beside her, watching the party. Do you know what I miss most about her? He asked. Eleanor waited. The way she saw me. She didn't see the CEO, the businessman, the success story. She saw the boy who was afraid of the dark, who cried at sad movies, who dreamed of changing the world. She saw me whole, vulnerable and strong, flawed and capable. His voice cracked a little. When she passed away 5 years ago, something in me died too. I started using success as armor. If I was impeccable, ruthless, perfect, no one would see my wounds. But do you know what happened? What? I stopped seeing myself too. I became the role I played, CEO, just that. I forgot I am people. Eleanor touched his hand. Your grandmother would be proud of who you are becoming now. I hope so. He looked at her. And you? Are you proud of what you are doing? Eleanor thought about the question. At 68, she had discovered a purpose she never imagined existed. She was no longer just the grandmother, the retiree, the survivor. She was someone making a difference in a unique and important way. I am, she replied. I'm discovering that life can surprise us at any age. Philip smiled. Bring on those 6 months then. Let's show that humanity isn't weakness. It's the greatest strength we have. The first 3 months were a roller coaster of emotions. Philip implemented deep changes, flexible hours, working from home twice a week, relaxation rooms, monthly direct feedback sessions. Eleanor was present in everything, observing, talking, listening. Sarah led her team with a philosophy she learned from her grandmother. People first, results second. Counterintuitively, results came faster precisely because of this priority. But not everything was rosy. Some old-school managers resisted. They saw the changes as weakness. One of them, Stephen Porter, sales manager for 12 years, began to subtly sabotage. He scheduled meetings at times he knew Philip couldn't attend. He spread rumors about the company losing focus. He undermined the authority of the new leadership. Eleanor noticed first. She had a sixth sense for detecting falseness. One afternoon, she found Stephen in the hallway talking to two salespeople. "Enjoy it while it lasts," he was saying. "Soon everything goes back to normal. This wellness talk is a fad. When the board gets tired, we go back to working for real." She approached. "Working for real?" Stephen turned, surprised. "Mrs. Vance didn't see you there." "Well, you should have, because I am always watching." Her eyes were firm, direct. "Do you know the difference between working for real and working with soul? When you work for real, you deliver results. When you work with soul, you deliver results and still go home human." Stephen forced a smile. "With all due respect, you don't understand business. I understand people, and I know how to recognize when someone is more worried about protecting their little kingdom than building something bigger." She turned to the salespeople. "You have a choice. You can follow someone who preaches fear or someone who preaches growth, but choose soon, because time is the only thing that doesn't come back." In the following days, Stephen intensified his campaign against the changes, but something unexpected happened. No one followed him. The employees had tasted what it was like to work in a healthy environment. They didn't want to go back. Philip finally confronted him on a Friday. "Stephen, I need managers who believe in this vision. If you don't believe, there is no problem, but I cannot have you actively mining what we are building." "Are you firing me?" "I am giving you a choice. Get on board for real or leave with a fair severance and my recommendation for other companies." Stephen looked at Philip for long seconds. Finally, he sighed. "I'll think about it over the weekend." On Monday, he resigned. In his letter, he wrote something that surprised Philip. "I can't change who I am. I learned to lead by fear because that was how I was led. But I recognize that you are building something better. I just don't know how to be part of it." Philip shared the letter with Eleanor. She read it in silence, then sighed. "It's sad," she said. "People who are hurt so much they only know how to hurt. But at least he was honest. That's already a start." The fourth month brought a different challenge. Eleanor began to feel tired. Not the normal daily tiredness, but a deep exhaustion. Dizziness when standing up. Constant headaches. She ignored it for weeks until Sarah noticed. "Grandma, you're pale. You need to see a doctor." "I'm fine, just tired." But she wasn't. On a Tuesday morning, while talking to a group of interns in the cafeteria, Eleanor felt the room spin. She grabbed the table, trying to hide it. She couldn't. Chloe, who was nearby, ran to support her. "Call an ambulance," she shouted. Philip arrived running, his face livid with worry. Sarah appeared seconds later, crying. Eleanor was taken to the hospital while trying to protest that she was fine. Tests revealed severe hypertension and signs of extreme exhaustion. The doctor, a 50-year-old man with round glasses, was direct. "You are pushing yourself too hard. Your body is asking for rest." "But I have work to do," Eleanor protested from the hospital bed. "Work can wait. Your health cannot." She stayed hospitalized for 3 days. Philip visited her every day after work, bringing flowers and news from the company. Sarah practically lived in the room. On the second night, when they were alone, Eleanor held her granddaughter's hand. "Do you know what the first thing I thought was when I woke up in the hospital?" "What, Grandma?" "That for the first time in my life I am tired from purpose, not survival." Sarah frowned. "I don't understand. I spent 70 years fighting to survive. Raising your aunts and your mother, working 3 jobs, putting food on the table. Every day was about enduring. But in the last few months, for the first time, I am living with purpose. And it is so intense, so complete, that my body can't handle it." She smiled sadly. "Do you know what that means? That it was worth it, every second. Grandma, you're scaring me. Don't be afraid, my love. I'm just realizing there is a difference between existing and living. I spent so much time existing I forgot what it was like to truly live. Sarah wiped her tears. So let's do this. You will rest, recover, and then come back, but at a slower pace. Eleanor nodded, but both knew she didn't know how to work at a slow pace. When she was discharged, Philip was waiting for her at the exit with a surprise. He took her to Tech Vision, where 300 employees were gathered in the lobby. When she entered, they gave her a standing ovation. There was a banner. "Thank you, Mrs. Vance, for teaching us to be human again." She cried, not tears of sadness, but of fulfillment. Chloe approached and handed her an album. Inside, there were letters, hundreds of them. Every employee had written a message of thanks. A developer wrote, "For the first time in 10 years of my career, I feel I can be a father and a professional without choosing between the two." A manager, "You saved me from a path of self-destruction. Thank you for reminding me I am human." And Chloe, "I started having ideas again, and now they are heard. This is because of you." Philip stood on a small improvised platform. "Mrs. Vance taught us that success without humanity is failure in disguise," he said, "and thanks to her, we are discovering that it is possible to have both. Thank you for believing in us when even we didn't believe." The applause was long, emotional. Eleanor sat in a chair, overwhelmed by emotion. At 68, she had discovered something she never imagined. Her greatest legacy wouldn't be money or possessions, but the lives she touched. In the following days, something unexpected happened. CEOs from other companies started calling. They wanted to know about Tech Vision's transformation. How had they done it? What was the secret? Philip forwarded everyone to Eleanor. Teresa Caldwell, the investor from the board, was the first to ask for a private chat. They met at a coffee shop near Tech Vision. "I manage a network of medical clinics," Teresa began. "We have 2,000 employees, and turnover is killing me. 35% a year. Doctors are exhausted, nurses quitting. I need your help." Eleanor stirred her coffee, thoughtful. "What do you want me to do?" "Teach my managers what you taught Philip, to see people, not numbers. It's not something you teach in a lecture, it is lived. Then come live with us, a few weeks as a consultant." And so it began. Eleanor spent 2 weeks at Teresa's clinics. She talked to doctors on the verge of burnout, nurses crying in the bathroom between shifts, receptionists treated like robots. She applied the same principle: listen, really listen, and then help managers see what they were doing wrong. It worked. In 1 month, the atmosphere in the clinics changed. In 2, turnover began to fall. Other CEOs appeared: a private school headmaster, a restaurant chain owner, a public hospital administrator, all with the same problem. They had forgotten they managed people, not parts. Philip had an idea. "Let's formalize this. Conversations with Eleanor. A program where you mentor leaders to be human in power." She hesitated. "I have no degree, no title. You have 70 years of life, worth more than any diploma." 68, she corrected, smiling. Philip organized everything. He rented a small room at a business school. They advertised discreetly, expected maybe 5 sign-ups. 30 showed up. The first session of the conversations happened on a rainy Thursday. 30 leaders from varied companies sitting in a circle. Eleanor in the center, no PowerPoint, no prepared script, just her and her story. She told about the abandonment, about raising 3 daughters alone, about choosing love over bitterness every day, about discovering at 68 that she still had much to offer the world. Then she opened for questions, and there, in that room, something magical happened. Powerful CEOs cried, admitting they were lost. Successful managers confessed they didn't know who they were beyond the job title anymore. Admired leaders revealed they had never felt so empty. And Eleanor listened, advised, challenged, comforted. Her logistics CEO raised his hand. "How do you deal with the fear of failing?" "I don't deal," she replied honestly. "I feel the fear every day. But I learned that courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing the right thing despite the fear." A fashion entrepreneur asked, "What if my team sees me as weak for showing vulnerability?" Vulnerability is not weakness, it is honesty. And people follow honest leaders, not perfect ones. The sessions became bi-weekly, then weekly. Eleanor found herself leading a movement she never planned. Leaders who participated went back to their companies, transformed. And the companies changed. Sarah watched everything with pride and worry. Pride for her grandmother, worry for the pace. "Grandma, you need to slow down." But Eleanor was living. For the first time, really living, not surviving. Living. The 5th month arrived with good news. TechVision's numbers were unquestionable. Profits up, record productivity, turnover practically zero. 3 new million-dollar contracts, all mentioning the company culture as a decisive factor. Robert Sterling was silent in board meetings. He knew he was losing, and gracious losers are rare in the business world. But the 6th month brought what no one expected. And it would change everything. It was a grey Monday in September when Robert Sterling requested a private meeting with Philip. It wasn't a formal board meeting, but something different, more personal. Philip received him in the office, tense. Only 1 month left until the end of the 6-month deadline. The numbers were irrefutable, but Robert was unpredictable. "I came to make a proposal," Robert began, sitting down uninvited. Philip crossed his arms. "I'm listening." "I am selling my share in the board, leaving TechVision." Philip blinked, confused. "Why?" Robert looked out the window, hands trembling slightly. "Because your rental..." "Grandmother was right. I am choosing quick profit over lasting legacy. And that reminded me of someone." "Who?" "Myself, 30 years ago." Philip sat down slowly. "I built my first business at 25, Robert continued. A small electronics component factory. Had 12 employees I treated like family. Knew the names of everyone's kids. Went to birthdays. When my best employee's mother got sick, I paid for the treatment out of pocket." He paused, voice cracking. "Then came the opportunity to expand. Investors pressured me to cut costs. I fired half the team, stopped the extra benefits, focused only on numbers. I got rich, and absolutely miserable." Philip waited in silence. "I sold the company 20 years ago, became an investor to never have to worry about people again. Only profits. Thought I was protecting myself, but actually I was emptying myself." Robert turned and Philip saw tears in his eyes. "Seeing you fight to keep humanity and profit together brought me back to that 25-year-old young man who believed it was possible. And I realized how much I lost by giving up on that belief." Philip didn't know what to say. Robert, the man who had almost destroyed everything he had built, was there, vulnerable and regretful. "I'm going to sell my stake to Teresa," Robert continued. "She believes in your vision, and I will use the money for something I should have done decades ago." "What?" "Find my old employees and apologize." The revelation shook Philip deeply. Robert wasn't the villain he imagined. He was just a man who had chosen protection over connection, and now realized the price of that choice. After Robert left, Philip found Eleanor in the break room, having coffee with a group of interns. He told her about the conversation. She listened in, silence, then smiled sadly. "Do you know the tragedy of people like Robert? They forget that being human isn't weakness. It is the only thing that keeps us truly alive." That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She was thinking about what she had built in the last few months. The conversations, TechVision's transformation, the lives she touched. But she also thought about her tired body, the headaches that returned, the blood pressure that spiked when she got stressed. At 68, she had discovered her purpose. But how much time did she have to fulfill it? She got up and went to the small desk in the corner of the room, opened the notebook Sarah had given her and began to write. "Today I discovered that my greatest fear isn't dying. It is not having lived enough. And living, I realized, isn't measured in years, but in moments where we truly matter to someone. I raised my daughters, watched my granddaughters grow. But only now, at 68, did I discover I still had something to offer the world. Not money, not fame, just the wisdom that comes from having chosen love over bitterness every day of my life. If I die tomorrow, I die knowing I made a difference, and that is worth more than all the years I could still live." She closed the notebook and went back to bed. She slept deeply, for the first time in weeks. The next morning, Sarah appeared at her apartment, agitated. "Grandma, the Wall Street Journal wants to do a piece on you. The journalist called Tech Vision asking about the humanity consultant who is transforming companies in New York." Eleanor frowned. "A piece? Why?" "Because you are becoming a legend, Grandma. The CEOs who participate in the conversations are spreading the word. They say, 'You have a gift.' I have no gift. Just lived a long time and learned a few things." But Sarah was radiant. "This is huge, Grandma. We can expand the conversations, reach more people, make a difference on a larger scale." Eleanor hesitated. More. But she was already exhausted. "We can think about it calmly," she said finally. The newspaper interview happened on a Wednesday. The journalist, a 40-year-old woman with a recorder and notepad, asked questions about her history, her philosophy, her work. "Aren't you afraid of dying?" she asked near the end. Eleanor thought carefully. "I'm afraid of not having lived enough. But living isn't measured in years. It is measured in the quality of the presence we have. I have been present in the last few months, more than in entire decades of my life. So no, I am not afraid." The article came out on Sunday. Front page of the business section. The headline, "The Grandmother Teaching CEOs to Be Human." Tech Vision's phone didn't stop ringing. Interview requests, speaking invitations, companies wanting to hire her services. Philip was worried. "Mrs. Vance, this is getting too big. You don't need to accept everything." But she felt a calling. Every call was a person asking for help. How to say no. In the following weeks, she accepted more than she should. 3 sessions of the conversations per week, consulting in 2 companies, interviews for business magazines, a podcast on leadership. Sarah saw her grandmother consuming herself. "Grandma, you need to stop. Look at you. You are exhausted again." "I'm fine." "You are not. Your blood pressure is high. You are barely sleeping. Please." But Eleanor felt she couldn't stop. There was so much to do, so many people in need. The revelation came in a session of the conversations. A CEO raised his hand and asked a simple question. "How do you balance caring for others with caring for yourself?" Eleanor opened her mouth to answer and realized she had no answer, because she wasn't balancing. She was giving herself until nothing was left. The silence stretched. The leaders waited. And then she did something she had never done before. She was vulnerable. "I'm not balancing," she admitted. "I am failing at that. I spent so much time teaching you to be human that I forgot to be human with myself." The room fell into absolute silence. "My granddaughter asks me to rest. My body asks me to slow down. But I keep pushing because I feel I need to seize every second, because I discovered my purpose too late, and now I am afraid of wasting time." A gray-haired CEO raised his hand. "May I say something?" "Of course." "You taught us that vulnerability is strength, but you are trying to be too strong. You are doing exactly what you taught us not to do, sacrificing yourself until you break." The words hit Eleanor like a punch. He was right. Another businesswoman spoke. "Your legacy won't end if you rest. Actually, your legacy will end if you don't rest, because you need to be alive to continue making a difference." Eleanor felt tears falling. She had spent so much time caring for others, she forgot she also needed care. After that session, she cancelled half her appointments. She started doing only 2 sessions of the conversations per month, dedicated time to walk in Central Park, read books she loved, simply be with Sarah. Philip noticed the change. "You are different, lighter." "I am learning that impact isn't measured by quantity, but by quality. I can touch fewer lives, but touch them more deeply." The 6th month came to an end. The final board meeting was scheduled for a Friday. Philip presented the final numbers: profits 20% above projected, turnover at 2%, record productivity, 5 new million-dollar contracts. And for the first time in the company's history, Tech Vision appeared on the list of best places to work. The vote was unanimous. Philip's vision was approved. Robert Sterling, who attended even having sold his share, stood up. "I want to say something if you allow me." Philip nodded. I spent 30 years believing that profit and humanity were mutually exclusive. Philip and Mrs. Vance proved they aren't. More than that, they proved they are complementary. And that changed not only this company, but changed me too. He looked at Eleanor, who was sitting in the back. Thank you for reminding me of the man I was before I lost my way. Eleanor nodded, a soft smile on her face. The celebration was on the same rooftop where they celebrated 6 months earlier. But this time it was different. It wasn't just relief, it was certainty. Certainty that they had discovered something fundamental about how companies should work. Philip approached Eleanor with 2 glasses of juice. You gave me a second chance to be human, he said. How can I thank you for that? By continuing to be one, even when it is difficult, especially when it is difficult. He smiled. I promise. Sarah appeared with news. Grandma, the university wants to know if you would be willing to give lectures to business students. It's not consulting, just sharing your story. Eleanor looked at her granddaughter, then at Philip, then at the 300 employees celebrating around her. Her heart was full. I'm in, she said. As long as it is 1 lecture a month, I need time to live too. Sarah hugged her grandmother, laughing and crying at the same time. That night, when everyone had gone, Eleanor stayed alone on the rooftop, looking at the illuminated city. At 68, she had discovered it is never too late to start over, to discover purpose, to make a difference. But she also discovered something equally important, that making a difference doesn't mean destroying yourself in the process, that caring for others starts with caring for yourself. That legacy is built not in speed, but in consistency. She closed her eyes and thought of Grandma Beatrice, who raised Philip with so much love. Thought of her own daughters, whom she raised alone. Thought of Sarah, who now led with wisdom beyond her age. The legacy continues, she whispered to the wind. Not because I do everything, but because I inspired others to do it too. 2 years passed like a breath. Eleanor, now recently turned 70, was sitting on the balcony of her new apartment in Brooklyn Heights. Sarah had insisted she move to a bigger, more comfortable place. The money from consultancies and lectures allowed that, and much more. But Eleanor hadn't changed her essence. She still made biscuits on Sundays, still took the bus when she wasn't in a hurry, still talked to strangers in the grocery line. Financial success hadn't erased who she was, only amplified her capacity to help. The Conversations had become a nationally recognized program. Companies from all over the US invited Eleanor. She accepted some, refused most. She had learned that saying no was as important as saying yes. Sarah was now Director of Technology at TechVision. She led a team of 50 people with the wisdom she learned observing her grandmother. People first, always. Results came as a natural consequence. Philip had become a reference in humanized leadership. He wrote a book about TechVision's transformation. Every chapter mentioned Eleanor. He always said she deserved to be co-author, but Eleanor refused. I don't need my name on a book cover. I need to see lives changing. That Saturday morning, Eleanor was rereading her journal, notes from the last 2 years. She found an entry that made her smile. Today, I turned 70. Sarah threw a surprise party. Philip was there, with the whole TechVision team. Chloe, who is now a project manager, gave an emotional speech, said I taught her that having ideas isn't insubordination, it's contribution. I cried so much I needed to redo my makeup 3 times. The phone rang. It was Teresa Caldwell, the investor who had become a close friend. Eleanor, I need to tell you something, Teresa said, voice emotional. Remember the wellness program we implemented in the clinics? Of course. How is it? We just received a national award for excellence in people management. And do you know what the judges said? That our culture is the most humanized they have ever seen in the health sector, that we are a benchmark. Eleanor smiled. Congratulations, Teresa, you made that happen. We made it. You planted the seed. I just watered it. After they hung up, Eleanor thought about seeds. How many had she planted in the last 2 years, and how many were sprouting without her knowing? Robert Sterling also called regularly. He had found his old employees, apologized, tried to repair damages. Some forgave him, others didn't. But everyone respected his courage to try. Now Robert ran a non-profit that taught human entrepreneurship to youth in underprivileged areas. He was rebuilding the man he was at 25, one action at a time. On a Wednesday afternoon, Eleanor received a letter. It was from one of the CEOs who participated in the conversations in the first year. He wrote, "Mrs. Vance, I need to tell you what happened. After our conversations, I completely changed my way of leading. I started listening to my team for real, implemented changes they suggested. And do you know the result? Our company grew 60% in 18 months. But more important than that, my 15-year-old son told me, 'Dad, you are different, more present, happier.' And I realized that the change wasn't just at work, it was in me. Thank you for reminding me that being a leader starts with being human." Eleanor kept the letter in a special box where she kept all the thank you messages. There were hundreds. Each represented a life touched, a change initiated, a seed planted. Sarah appeared at the apartment with news. "Grandma, Tech Vision wants to create an institute for humanized leadership, and they want you to be the godmother." "Godmother?" Eleanor laughed. "Isn't being a consultant enough? It's not an official position, it's symbolic. Your name representing the values of the institute, and your lectures being the foundation of the curriculum," Eleanor thought. 2 years ago, she was a retiree with a simple life. Now her name would be associated with a teaching institute. Life really surprised at any age. "I accept," she said, "as long as the institute offers scholarships for low-income youth. Humanized leadership cannot be a privilege of those who have money." Sarah already expected that answer. "Already in the project, Grandma. 50% of the spots will be free." On the day of the inauguration of the Beatrice Institute for Humanized Leadership, named in honor of Philip's grandmother, 300 people attended. Alumni of the conversations, Tech Vision employees, young scholarship recipients, journalists, business people. Philip gave the opening speech. "My grandmother Beatrice taught me that success without human connection is well-dressed loneliness. Mrs. Vance reminded me of that lesson when I needed it most. This institute exists so that other leaders don't need to wait for a crisis to learn what they taught me." Eleanor also spoke, but briefly. "I am not a professor, I am not an expert, I am just a woman who lived 70 years and learned a few things. I learned that love is stronger than hurt, that vulnerability is not weakness, that leading is serving, and that it is never too late to start over." The applause was long, emotional. After the ceremony, a 19-year-old young man approached. "Mrs. Vance, my name is Raphael. I won a scholarship from the Institute." "Congratulations, Raphael. Where are you from?" "From the Bronx. My mom cleans houses. My dad left when I was 5. Just like your story." Eleanor felt her heart squeeze. "And why do you want to study leadership?" "Because I want to create a company that is different, where people aren't treated like numbers, where my mum could work without feeling invisible, and you showed me it is possible." Eleanor touched his shoulder. "It is possible, and you will succeed. I believe in you." Raphael cried. No one had ever said that to him. That night back home, Eleanor wrote in her journal, "Today we inaugurated an institute, but more important than the building or the name was seeing Raphael, a boy who grew up like me in hardship but with big dreams. If the institute trains just one Raphael, it will have been worth it, because he will train others, and so the legacy continues. I realize today that my true legacy isn't what I do directly. It is what I inspire others to do. Every CEO who learns to listen will teach others to listen. Every leader who chooses humanity will create more human leaders. And so, even when I am no longer here, the seed will continue to sprout." 3 months later, Eleanor was invited to give a lecture at Columbia University. The auditorium was packed with more than 1,000 people, mostly business students. She walked onto the stage without notes, without PowerPoint, just her and her story. "I spent 68 years surviving," she began, "and just 2 years truly living. What is the difference? Surviving is waking up, working, sleeping, repeating. Living is waking up with purpose, working with meaning, sleeping knowing you made a difference." She told about the abandonment, about raising the daughters alone, about the daily decision to choose love over bitterness, about going to the interview in Sarah's place, about becoming a consultant at 68, and about learning that it is never too late to discover who you really are. When she finished, the silence was absolute. Then a student raised her hand, crying. "How do you have so much courage?" Eleanor smiled softly. "I don't have courage, I have fear every day, but I choose to act despite the fear, because if I wait to not have fear, I will never do anything." Another question. What if we fail? You will fail. Many times. I failed countless times. But failure isn't defeat. Defeat is giving up trying. Failure is just learning disguised as pain. The questions continued for almost 2 hours. When it finally ended, hundreds of students came down to hug her, thank her, promise they would be different leaders. Sarah, who had watched hidden in the back of the auditorium, waited until everyone left, found her grandmother sitting alone on the stage, exhausted but radiant. "Grandma, you just changed the lives of 1,000 people." Eleanor shook her head. "I planted seeds in 1,000 people. It is up to them to decide if they will water those seeds or let them die." Back at the apartment, Eleanor sat on the balcony with a cup of chamomile tea, looked at the stars over New York, thought about the journey of the last 2 years, the lives touched, the changes witnessed, the legacy being built. Thought also of Grandma Beatrice, whom she never met personally but was connected to through Philip. 2 grandmothers, 2 generations, the same transformative love. The phone rang. It was Philip. "Mrs. Vance, I need to tell you something." "Go ahead." Tech Vision just received a buyout offer. An international group wants to buy the company for an amount that would change my life forever. "And are you going to sell?" Silence on the other line. "I don't know. It's a lot of money, but they want to change our culture. Go back to focusing only on profit. They say our humanized approach isn't scalable internationally." Eleanor took a deep breath. "Philip, I am going to ask you a question. When you die, do you want to be remembered as the CEO who got rich, or as the CEO who proved it is possible to be human and successful at the same time?" He didn't need to answer. Both knew. "Thank you," he said simply. "I know what I'm going to do." On the following Monday, Philip publicly refused the offer. In an interview with the Wall Street Journal, he declared, "There are things money cannot buy. One of them is the soul of your company. Another is sleeping in peace, knowing you are building something that matters." The decision generated national debate. Some called him an idiot, others courageous. But the 300 employees of Tech Vision knew exactly what that decision meant, that they were more than numbers on a spreadsheet. Eleanor turned 71 at an intimate party with family and close friends. Sarah prepared a surprise, a video with testimonials from all the people Eleanor had impacted. Chloe, now a project manager. "You taught me that my voice matters." The developer who hid his fatherhood. "You taught me that being a father doesn't make me less professional." Teresa Caldwell. "You transformed not only my company but my way of seeing the world." Robert Sterling. "You helped me rediscover the man I was before I lost myself." Philip. "You gave me a second chance to be human, and that is worth more than all the success I have ever achieved." And Raphael, the young scholarship recipient. "You showed me it is possible to come from where I came from and still dream big and dream right." When the video ended, Eleanor was crying, but not tears of sadness, tears of full realization. That night, before sleeping, she wrote her last entry in the journal. 71 years, 3 daughters, 5 granddaughters, hundreds of lives touched, thousands of seeds planted. They asked if I am afraid of dying. I am afraid of not having lived enough, but I realized something today. Living is not measured in years, but in legacy. And legacy is not what we do, but what we inspire others to do. When I leave this life, I won't take money, fame, or recognition. But I will leave something infinitely more valuable, the living proof that choosing love over bitterness, humanity over cynicism, purpose over survival is not naivety. It is wisdom. It is the only way to truly live. She closed the journal and looked out the window. New York slept under the blanket of stars. Somewhere in this city, Raphael was studying to become the leader he dreamed of being. Chloe was planning her next project. Philip was with his family, truly present. Teresa was treating employees with dignity. And it all started with a grandmother who had the courage to walk into an office and fight for her granddaughter. Eleanor smiled. It is never too late to make a difference. Never too late to start over. Never too late to choose living instead of just surviving. Her legacy would continue, not because she would do everything, but because she inspired others to do it too. And so, like ripples in a pond, the impact would expand far beyond what she could reach alone. She fell asleep in peace, knowing she lived well, not perfectly, but authentically, not without fear, but despite it, not measuring days, but making days matter. And that, after all, was everything. The end. If Eleanor's journey touched your heart, know that stories like this exist to remind us that it is never too late to start over, to make a difference, to choose to be human in a world that sometimes forgets what that means. Here on the channel, we share stories that inspire, that move us, and that make us believe we can be better. If you want to continue this journey with us, subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and tell us in the comments, what was the most important lesson Eleanor taught you? Your story matters too, and who knows, maybe it becomes our next inspiration. Until the next story, and remember, you can also plant seeds that transform lives.